Hello and welcome to week 4 of the Open SAP course SAP Fiori Overview, Design, Develop and Deploy. My name is Sibylle Brehm, Product Manager for SAP Fiori Launchpad. I brought along Thomas Reis, who you already met in week 1.
Hello and a warm welcome from me too.
Last week you learned all about developing SAP Fiori apps, and this week we will dive into implementing and managing SAP Fiori. In this first unit, Understanding SAP Fiori Content, you will learn some basic concepts of SAP Fiori content to get an understanding of what you will be configuring as part of a Fiori implementation. In the following unit, you will see an example of getting started with the setup of SAP Fiori in an SAP S/4HANA system. You will see how you can quickly get SAP Fiori activated and how you can adjust the standard delivery to your needs. In Unit 3, we will take a closer look at refining the SAP Fiori Launchpad experience further, for example, adding custom content, configuring Launchpad features, and theming SAP Fiori. In Unit 4, you will learn about supporting SAP Fiori in your production system. Finally, in Unit 5, you will see how we plan to bring together content from various sources, for example, several S/4HANA systems, into one central Launchpad running on SAP Cloud Platform. Now, let us focus on understanding SAP Fiori content.
Customers have various options to implement the modern SAP Fiori user experience, and we have different recommendations depending on the use case and the underlying SAP solution. The option you choose also influences the Fiori content, so let us take a closer look at the components that are part of the deployment. In most cases, there is an underlying SAP backend system which you can see here on the bottom, e.g. an S/4HANA or a Business Suite system, from which the business data is consumed. To run SAP Fiori, you need to add SAP-delivered or custom-built Fiori UIs and a Fiori Launchpad. The Fiori Launchpad is your entry point to the Fiori apps, as you've already seen in previous units. We call this bundle of components that are required to run SAP Fiori the Fiori front-end server, but that does not mean that it needs to run on a separate machine. Now, what are the recommendations for different back-end systems? Let's start with the Business Suite in the middle. When Fiori was first introduced for ERP, the strategy was to keep the back-end stable while the innovations came with Fiori. In other words, Business Suite customers can get UI innovations without having to upgrade their back-end systems. So the Fiori UI components of SAP Business Suite systems were built to be compatible with several back-end versions. Therefore, the recommendation is to run Fiori UI components and the SAP Fiori Launchpad content on a standalone front-end server using the most modern technology available. This setup also allows you to connect this front-end server to multiple Business Suite systems as a central entry point. In contrast, for S/4HANA, the backend is the innovation driver, so here you have a tight coupling of the backend version and the version of the SAP Fiori front-end components. So the recommended deployment option for S/4HANA systems is an embedded front-end server deployment, which means that the front-end server with the required front-end components for SAP Fiori runs on the SAP S/4HANA server itself. A standalone installation is still possible, but it's not possible to run front-end server as a hub for multiple S/4HANA systems, as this would mean that all connected S/4HANA systems would need to be on the same release at all times, which is usually not realistic. If you want to have one central entry point for several S/4HANA systems, then what you can do is use the SAP Cloud Platform for the integration as it becomes available. In this scenario, you set up a central launchpad, which consumes content from various backend systems. In addition, you can choose SAP Cloud Platform as your deployment option for running custom Fiori apps deployed on Cloud Platform. Of course, these apps can also consume data from a backend system like S/4HANA. Depending on the deployment option you choose, the Fiori content entities and their configuration differ. So I hope that this short introduction will help you better understand the content of this week. I already showed you this slide in week 1. Let's have another look as a reminder of how the transition to SAP Fiori focuses on providing innovative user interactions. In S/4HANA, this is achieved by defining business roles that provide users with all the apps required for their use cases, independent of UI technology of each app, be it SAP UI5, SAP GUI transactions, Web Info applications, or web client user interfaces. These apps are brought to you as a business user via the Fiori Launchpad, which is your entry point to the Fiori world. Now let us take a short look into how Fiori apps are structured in the Fiori Launchpad and at the additional services the Fiori Launchpad brings to you. Sibylle, over to you.
Thank you. Let us start with a short demo first. This is a Fiori Launchpad running on an S/4HANA system. On the canvas, you see various tiles and links that can be used to launch applications. Some of the tiles have a little number of them. They are called dynamic tiles, and there are analytical tiles as well. The tiles on the home page are sorted into groups, and you can access these groups either by scrolling down or via the groups bar here on top. The end user can also decide whether he wants to see all of his groups in one long scrollable list, as we saw it now, or if you just want to see one group at a time. Now it's more an experience like tabs. On the home page, usually the user just has his favorite, his most used apps. He can add other apps to the home page via the App Finder. In the App Finder, all apps are sorted into catalogs. So you see here a long list of catalogs, and I can click a catalog to see all the tiles in that catalog and see if they are already assigned to the home page or if they are not. And I can add further tiles to my home page. Navigate back to the home page and see the new tile. Now let us quickly summarize what we saw during the demo. First of all, there are the tiles or links that are used to launch applications. You will get a closer look at navigation a bit later, but now is a good time to start understanding what happens behind the scenes when you click on a tile or link. The tiles and links are not tightly coupled to the app that they launch. Instead, a tile or link is just based on an intent, which is a logical way to indicate what should happen next. An intent is a combination of a semantic object, for example, a sales order or an invoice, and an action, like create or edit. So the tile or link just contains the intent which defines what should happen, such as display sales order or edit invoice. To execute the intent, another content entity is needed, the target mapping. A target mapping literally assigns a navigation target to an intent. The target mapping can be marked as relevant to specific device types, desktop, tablet, phone, and it can optionally pass some parameters to the target. So to launch an application, both a tile or link and a target mapping are needed. The tile or link to trigger the launch, and the target mapping to find the right target application. To make tiles and target mappings available for a business role, they are assigned to a catalog. During the demo, you saw the catalogs in the App Finder. Groups, in contrast, are subsets of the catalogs and just contain the tiles that should be displayed on the Launchpad homepage. In addition to the groups predefined by the administrator, end users can personalize their homepage by adding further groups or adding or removing tiles from the groups. Finally, the roles are used to assign the Fiori content to the end users. This graphic summarizes how the Fiori Launchpad content entities work together. All the Fiori content is assigned to the user via his or her roles. The role contains both the catalogs and the groups, as you can see in the screenshot of a role on the right side of the screen. For an app to be available to a user with a specific role, both the tile and the target mapping required for launching this application need to be available in a catalog assigned to that role. The target mapping then links to the actual app to be launched. As I already said, the tiles that the user is supposed to see on his homepage need to be assigned to a group that is part of one of his roles. Since this is purely about display of tiles on the homepage, the target mappings are not required as part of the groups. As you saw in the last slide, there's a separation of the tile or link from the target mapping. This concept is called intent-based navigation. Why is this navigation concept used in the Fiori Launchpad? One reason is that it makes it easy for you to reuse the same entities in different situations. For example, you can use a tile on your homepage and a link inside a Fiori app to launch to the same target app by pointing both to the same target mapping. You can also reuse the same tile on the same homepage to launch a summary app on a phone and a more full-featured app on a desktop. Intent-based navigation is also very helpful for app-to-app navigation. For example, you can implement your custom app pointing to an intent, and the right app to be launched will be calculated at runtime, depending on the intent parameters. You can see an example for this on the right side. From the source app, the user should navigate to the intent purchase order Manage. In this case, the semantic object is purchase order and Manage is the action. In addition, there are two parameters in this example that influence which app is launched: the device type and the role. Strategic buyers get a different app than purchasers, and the mobile app is different from the desktop app. Usually, you can see the intent and its parameters as part of the URL in the browser. To enable a user to launch applications, an administrator needs to assign, on the one hand, the required catalogs and groups, as we saw before, but on the other hand, the user will need many more permissions. For example, permissions to use the Fiori Launchpad at all, permissions to launch SAP Fiori apps, permissions to access the business logic of the app, permissions to access the data displayed in the app. Assigning these permissions can get quite complex, especially when the front-end server is deployed in standalone or hub mode, as you need to make sure that both on the back-end and on the front-end the right permissions are assigned to the user. For S/4HANA systems with embedded deployment, the setup is easier, since all permissions can be added to the same role, and you do not need to differentiate between back-end and front-end roles anymore. To support administrators further, PFCG integration automatically assigns all apps that are referenced in a catalog to a role as soon as that catalog is assigned to it. Administrators can then easily generate default permission settings for all these apps and use those as a basis for defining their customer-specific authorizations.
New and improved home pages is one of the innovations of SAP Fiori 3, so let's wrap up with a look at the newest UI enhancement which has just started to become available, the Spaces concept. Recently, the new Spaces concept was introduced with SAP S/4HANA Cloud 2005. We plan to make it available in S/4HANA 2020 on-premise and on SAP Cloud Platform later this year too. This new concept aims to increase the flexibility in content structuring by providing several role-based pages to end users instead of just one homepage. For every role, one space is made available to the users where they can find a page with their most important entry points and information. Tiles in pages can be grouped into sections. You can see the assigned spaces in the navigation bar on top of the Launchpad. In the first version, each space just contains one entry page, so that users can have one page per business role, but in the next step it's planned that spaces will also hold several pages and later even page hierarchies if they're needed. Customers can define the layout of these spaces and pages for themselves, and users can personalize them to meet their needs. Sibylla, over to you again to explain how that works.
SAP is delivering new page layouts for S/4HANA and S/4HANA Cloud systems as part of the business role templates. When an administrator copies the business role template to create his own business role, he can also create his own page layout through the Page Composer and assign this page layout to his newly defined role. The Page Composer tool is a very easy-to-use WYSIWYG tool, similar to the current personalization of the homepage. At a later point in time, it's planned to enable also key users or LOB experts to manage and create pages. Currently, the default style for your Launchpad is still the homepage with groups, but starting with SAP S/4HANA Cloud 2005, administrators can centrally activate the new Pages and Spaces concept. In addition, users will be able to decide as part of their personalization which homepage style they want to use. Now let us quickly summarize what you learned in this course. You learned about the different deployment options and which ones are recommended for different backends and scenarios. Then we talked about different content entities that are currently available and how they work together. We took a closer look at the intent-based navigation, and finally, you learned about the new Pages and Spaces concept and how it can change the Launchpad experience. In the next unit, we will look at the example of an S/4HANA project and see what's involved in activating SAP Fiori apps in your own system.